I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Charlene. Welcome to Empowered, Life Lessons of Everyday Women.
Each episode, you're going to meet an amazing woman who has struggled through challenges both in her home life and work life and has become very successful. Welcome back to part 2 with Susan, as she shares her story of how she acquired a business and followed a dream. Grab a cup of coffee, get in a comfy chair, and join us as we talk to Susan. I have to admit that I've had dreams of having my own business, but never empowered myself to pursue that dream. I have never had the gumption to do this. I know you have. I have not. And I would love to know what empowered you to say, I can do this.
Well, the first thing I did was leave advertising and make myself a 2-year plan and say, I have enough money right now for 2 years to try something else. Let's see what I can try. I knew I was moving from Boston to Cape Cod. I looked for a job. There were 2 jobs in the paper. One was you can become a clammer or a fisherman in Wellfleet. Bring your own waiters. I'm that teacher. The job that I saw in the paper was the Highland House Museum is looking for a curator who can put us on the map. And I thought, oh, that's an interesting idea. So I took a temporary job as the curator of the local historical museum. And while I was there, in the door walked this man who owned a pottery business. I had no idea what it was about, but everybody else in that place knew him very well because he and his partner had this business since 1953.
Wow.
It was 2001 when I met him. And I started talking to him and I thought, this is very interesting. I have an undergraduate degree from UC Berkeley in ceramic design, and I did ceramics, jewelry, and fabric design at Berkeley, and I never went back to it, but it was always something I thought about. So here I am, 50 years old, and this man walks in the door, and I started talking with him about the pottery business, and he said, it's going to go out of business. I'm 79 years old, and I'm looking for somebody to take it over. And I thought, gee,
gosh, it's like kismet, right?
It was like, wow, this is way to my 20s, to what I really loved doing, which was being an artist. And both of my parents, who are very, practical, said, you'll never make a living at that. You better do something else. And here I am. And I thought, I can buy this business and do this and do the curating on the side.
So it's interesting because it kind of gets back to your journaling, right? When you talked about in our first episode, journaling, making sure you're looking at your passions, going back and revisiting. It's like a full circle for you.
It was a full circle for me.
I love that.
And I think you probably were not afraid of, you said that in our first episode, we talked about how your parents always talked about business at the kitchen table or at the dinner table. So having your own business probably didn't scare you or frighten you the same way it might frighten somebody that had zero experience in business, because you kind of knew what you had to do to make it work.
Exactly. Except that this was a totally different business than advertising. I knew I could use my advertising experience to expand the business, but the actual, how do I get people on Cape Cod to work for me in this business? He was down to, there was one employee and that was it. So it was like I had to build this business back up. And some of it was trial and error, to tell you the truth. Some of the local artists came in, worked for 3 months and said, not for me. So I went through a learning curve at the beginning.
How did your previous experience maybe help you in tackling some of those challenges?
Well, throughout advertising, I had managed a lot of people in different situations, always in a creative department. So I was managing writers and art directors and photographers and illustrators and people who, were contributing to the ads. So I was used to managing different types of creative people. So that definitely helped.
I'm sure managing creative types might be a little bit different than managing strictly business types, because from my experience, not that I'm super creative, but for me, when I get into my creative mood, I'm kind of like, I don't want to say scattered, but I'm more open to certain things than I would be if I'm strictly talking about business and how to get something done and whatnot. So I'm sure there were challenges from just the differences in people.
Yeah, I definitely have a split personality. I have the creative side and then I have the business side.
It's interesting that you said that because, as you know, I was also in creative. And I think I also have that split personality. I have that business side and I have that creative side, which I don't think that every creative person has. So you do get that scattering of personalities and difficulty. You can't fit everybody in a box, as it were. So I'm sure as you're creating the pottery and, dealing with different challenges in the people that you're hiring, you're dealing with, I don't know what to call it, not flakiness, but not ability to focus maybe on the business part of it and more on the creative part of it, which you need kind of that balance, I think.
And the pottery business that I bought has 22 original designs, which I copyrighted and I trademarked the name. So I'm teaching people to paint the designs that we've created. And one or two people felt the urge to add additional things to the designs that weren't the original. So, for example, I look at a cup and it looks right on the right side. On the back side, there's a little red bow where did that come from? Oh, I thought it would be a good idea, he said, to add that. So, creative people can want to put their own mark on it, whereas in my business, we were actually copying designs that had been created by the originators, and then I've added an additional 24 designs.
So I am somewhat creative, not super creative, but everything that I've ever tried to do, and I've done pottery before, I would get so many ideas in my head of what I wanted to do. It was like swimming through the ocean. I just had idea after idea after idea. How were you able to focus some of your maybe ideas or your passion or whatever to become a success? And successful isn't the right word. So in my experience, right, I've always been afraid that if I take that I'm passionate about and I try to then make a living at it, some of that passion will go away because now it becomes a job rather than a release. Did you ever experience that? And if you did, how did you tackle it?
Yeah, I've experienced that too, where it's like a little bit of a burnout situation. I gain a lot of, pleasure from actually creating the pieces myself and then having, a bunch of employees do it. I sort of aced myself out of a job, of the creative job. So I had to actually get back to making things myself in order to alleviate that feeling of, oh my gosh, I've got everybody working and doing it and I'm not doing anything. But I have to go back to the journal. I have always kept a journal, including a creative journal with new designs and everything. And I look back at these things frequently to see where I'd been or where I'm at, or get inspiration.
So I was just going to mention for our listeners, I read a great book, and this is kind of like what we're talking about right now. It's called The E-Myth. It's just a short little book, and it's about a lady who has a pie company, and she loves making pies. And so then everybody encourages her to get in business to make the pies. And then all of a sudden she realizes she's not making the pies anymore, but it goes through her journey, and there's a passion to the creative process. And when you get too far removed from that, even as the owner of the business, you lose something. And she ended up going back to making pies and not having a business. I believe that's what the book did. But it was a very interesting journey. And so that would be a book I might grab if I was interested in, starting a business. Take a look at that book. It's a short read, but it was great.
So I guess one of the experiences I've had is if I come up with a design and I make it multiple times, I get tired of making it the same way, getting my little spin on it or whatever. So I can see how if I were doing a pottery business, doing the same thing, right? You've got your designs, but you're giving it to somebody else to maybe fulfill, then you can go back and create something new.
Exactly. And the thing with our pottery is that, I don't know if people know much about pottery, but this is low fire pottery. We paint it on the greenware before it's ever fired. And it is really more about the decoration or the painting. And that can all be done freehand, which is what I like about the business that I bought, is that we don't use decals. We don't draw ahead of time. Everything is just freehand. So whatever might come out may be, a variation on the theme.
I like that.
So I think we've talked about this already, but when you run a business, you're responsible for everything. So it's not just the pottery. What was the most challenging aspect for you? And how do you identify areas that you may need additional support? And how do you obtain that support in your business?
The hardest thing for me was basically the bookkeeping. I am just not a bookkeeper. I keep a budget and I do my own thing. I actually decided to hire a bookkeeper right off the bat. And that really alleviated that whole part of the business for me. And I hired a friend who, actually a childhood friend that I've known forever, and she has stuck with me the whole time, which has been great. Recognizing that I was never going to do that, and it's a part that I don't really like, and handing it over was good.
Identifying your strengths and your weaknesses and making sure that you've got both covered.
Whereas the advertising I did myself.
Obviously. And you felt empowered to do that because you knew what to do and you knew how to create. So another question that goes along with that, the advertising, networking. How did you utilize networking in your business once you bought this business and it became yours? How did you use networking to help you get the word out?
Well, the other thing that I spent money on was having a website done, which was really important. They didn't really have a website when I bought the business, and that was a big part of the beginning of networking. I had a list of clients. I also tapped all the local papers and did speaking engagements, various places, just put the word out that I was a new business owner through our Chamber of Commerce. I was invited to speak. It was that type of a thing.
So when you have your own business, we've talked about this in other areas, but you're still working at 24 hours a day, no matter what you want to do. How did you manage your personal time so that you were able to actually have a more balanced work life?
Well, I think I mentioned that I bought the business while I was still the curator of the Highland House Museum. And within a year, I had to quit that job because the pottery business took over. I bought the business when I was 53. So I didn't have any kids, that I needed to take care of. And it was really pretty much I could devote my time. I was pretty lucky at that point. I got divorced when I was 50. So this was sort of something I could throw myself into.
So I think we've all been in a situation where we're completely exhausted and we have something that needs to get done, and maybe you're working with somebody that you need to have do something for you, and they might be resistant. And all you want to say is, just do it because I said so. How do you stop yourself from saying that, which you know is inappropriate, and work through it?
I've been told I'm very nice.
You are very nice.
And I think all my experience in managing a whole lot of people has helped. But generally, just talking to people and appealing to their better side is what I would suggest. Does that answer the question?
No, that's fine. Any answer is an answer.
So I think we also answered this question, but how you get your creative juices flowing, you said you journal. So I would assume that is what you do. I assume that you're still looking for new designs. This business is still ongoing right now. So, and what do you see as the future for this business?
Well, if I want to come up with something new, I basically go in my studio in the evening when it's absolutely quiet, turn on a podcast or some music, and just doodle on broken pieces of greenware. I just basically paint directly on the pieces. I try not to think about it too much. I really sort of, get into the flow. If I want to do something creative, I'll just put myself in the studio to do it.
That's great.
I like that. I work with fabric and I go out on hikes. That's how I pull my inspiration. And then I come home and I copy down what my ideas from that. So I appreciate getting out into your studio. That makes sense.
So it sounds like you're still getting joy out of your business and your creative process, which is great. And it's not become a chore for you. Is that correct?
No, I actually owned a gallery up until February, this year, February gallery a year ago. And I was managing 12 other artists in addition to my work and having a retail operation. That was really not allowing me to go into the studio as much as I wanted. So I sold the gallery and downsized. And now what I'm just doing is selling out of my studio and wholesaling to a half a dozen clients.
You simplified.
I simplified.
And I think people forget to simplify in their life. I think we're so busy, and it's particularly speaking to our listeners who are probably quite a bit younger, but trying to manage all those things. And sometimes you just need to take everything and just kind of put it in a funnel and just take out what's important, use the important stuff and let the rest of it go away, because it gets very complicated and it gets exhausting.
It does. And as you mentioned, managing other people it can take up a lot of time. And managing a dozen other artists and having shows and doing the promotion it didn't give me much time to do my own creative work. So that was the decision that I made to actually downsize because of that.
It makes sense. It makes perfect sense.
So 2 questions. What do you think your biggest life lesson has been in this portion of your life? Because we put you into 2 episodes, so I want to talk just about like the pottery business and being a business owner, and any additional advice you would like to give to our listeners, because we're really trying to appeal to those that are maybe starting out in their career and, midway through their life and are having these challenges. What kind of advice would you give them?
I say, don't be afraid. It'll all work out in the end. And if it hasn't worked out, it's not the end yet. So give yourself an opportunity to follow some of those early passions that you were thinking about. Plan for it, but try and follow it if you possibly can, even in small ways, even if you can do a little side gig to what you're doing.
Okay, I think that's great. Well, Susan, thank you so much for your time, and we really appreciate it. You've had a really diverse and interesting life, and we're happy that you're able to share all of your stories with our listeners. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's great talking to you.
It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
To our listeners, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Empowered, Life Lessons of Everyday Women. We would really appreciate if you could leave us a rating or a review. If you have any challenges or questions you are facing, we want to hear from you, as we value your input and suggestions. And if you have a compelling story or life lesson you would like to share, please connect with us at empoweredlifelessons@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, other social media platforms, or visit us at empoweredlifelessons.com. In our next episode, meet Irma. Irma started her law career as a prosecutor, moved into private practice, and finished her career as a U.S. magistrate judge. She is also involved in a mentorship and networking organization in her community to support legal professionals.